Okay, so welcome everyone to this deep dive.
Yeah.
And today,
Yeah.
we're diving into some really big changes
It's changed.
happening like all over the place in finance, in
It's okay.
regulation, even in sports.
Uh-huh.
Um, and we've got like this really interesting mix of things to talk about.
Yeah.
We've got like Dogecoin doing its thing. We've got Ripple and this like potentially precedent-setting legal battle.
Yeah.
And then we've got, all these discussions about
Right.
transgender athletes
Yeah.
and even like classic baseball drama with Shohei Ohtani.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. Yeah, it might
There's a
sound
lot to unpack.
like a lot of different things that we're trying to cover, but
Yeah.
we're going to connect the dots and try to pull out the insights that actually matter.
The big insights.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, when you look at the headlines, like, whoa, how does this even all go together? But I think, once we start digging a little deeper, it becomes pretty clear that, whether we're talking about like how we look at value,
Right.
how we look at the rules, how rules are changing, how they're interpreted,
Mhm.
even just like basic ideas around fairness, how that's changing in all these different spheres of life.
Yeah, no, it is really fascinating, and I think Dogecoin is a great place to start.
Yeah.
Because it's this digital asset that just like keeps defying expectations, and now we're seeing this like trend, where you've got these large wallet addresses, the whales, the ones with like over 1 million Dogecoin.
Over 1 million Dogecoin.
They're accumulating.
They are accumulating
They're
business.
scooping it up.
Yeah.
So what is that all about?
Right. And so, it's always a question of like trying to understand the why behind these trends. And so, I think one of the things that it could signal is that you've got these major players who are starting to see long-term potential in Dogecoin, right? These aren't your average kind of day traders. These are people who are looking at, longer time horizon.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, are they anticipating, new developments within the Dogecoin ecosystem? Are they, just reacting to broader positive sentiment in the crypto market as a whole?
Okay.
Or are they, maybe seeing potential for increased real world use cases for Dogecoin? It's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
But it definitely suggests like a level of conviction that goes beyond, just its meme coin origins.
Right. It's not just a joke anymore.
Not just a joke.
Right.
And I think also, this kind of accumulation can tell us a little something about, market psychology.
Right.
The belief that, Dogecoin might actually have staying power.
Right. So if these big wallets are like scooping up all this Dogecoin, how does that impact the market for like the rest of us?
Well, one of the things that it does right away
Yeah.
is it decreases market liquidity.
Right.
Right. So if you've got, a big chunk of the total supply of Dogecoin locked away in these large wallets, it means there are fewer coins out there that are readily available for trading.
Right. So less to go around.
Less to go around.
Yeah.
And that can actually amplify price volatility.
Right.
Right. Because with fewer coins changing hands,
Yeah.
Larger price swings become more likely.
Oh, okay. So it can make things kind of rocky?
It can make things a little bit rocky.
But then again, like you were saying,
Yeah.
if these holders are institutions
Right.
or like long-term believers,
Long-term believers, yeah.
it could really signal like a turning point for Dogecoin.
It could be a turning point.
It could be like moving from,
Right.
this kind of joke to a more established digital asset.
A more legitimate, store of value.
It's still pretty mind-blowing
It is pretty mind-blowing.
to think about,
Yeah.
going from like an internet meme
Yeah.
to something that could have like
Right.
real financial weight.
And I think, things like
Yeah.
what Tesla did, accepting Dogecoin
Right?
for some of their merchandise.
Yeah.
That was a
real tangible thing.
It was a real tangible example
Yeah.
of it finding real world utility.
Right.
And so that raises the question,
Yeah.
could this combination of whale accumulation and increasing real world applications,
Yeah. Could that
pay
lead to wider acceptance?
wider acceptance?
Could we see it,
Yeah.
in mainstream payment systems?
Yeah.
Could we see it even like decentralized applications.
Smart contracts.
Decentralized applications, smart contracts.
It's still speculative.
It is, but it's certainly interesting.
It's interesting that those players are looking at it.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit here.
Okay.
Let's move from like one corner of the crypto world to like the broader market.
Right.
And what the Federal Reserve has been doing, it seems like their decision to like maintain interest rates has brought a little bit of like calm to the waves.
Or crypto seas.
Right. And so, the crypto market historically has been very sensitive to like shifts in monetary policy.
Right.
And so when interest rates are held steady or when there are signals that maybe rates might even be cut down the line, investors often become more inclined to explore assets that might offer like higher potential returns, even if those come with more risk. Right. And so cryptocurrencies definitely fall into that category.
Higher risk, higher reward.
Higher risk, higher reward. And it's kind of like an inverse relationship, right?
Yeah.
When the returns on like traditional lower risk investments like bonds are less attractive then the appeal of alternatives tends to increase.
That's right.
And it's not just about interest rates, is it? There's also this whole concept of quantitative tightening or QT.
QT, and so for those of us...
for those of us who are not monetary policy experts, can you break down what QT is and what the Fed has been doing with it?
Yeah, so quantitative tightening is essentially the opposite of quantitative easing. Right? So it's the process by which the Federal Reserve reduces the size of its balance sheet. And so they mainly do this by selling off U.S. Treasury bonds and other securities that they had acquired during, periods of economic stimulus. And so this action basically decreases the amount of money circulating in the financial system.
So it's like pulling money out.
It's like pulling money out. Reducing market liquidity.
Less money readily available.
Less money readily available.
Which could make things, tighter
for
the crypto market.
To the crypto market.
But it sounds like the Fed has made a bit of an adjustment.
They have.
To their approach here.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, this is where it gets interesting.
Because what's fascinating is that the Fed has decided to really slow down the pace at which they're reducing their balance sheet. So starting in April, the monthly cap on the sale of Treasury securities is going from $25 billion down to just $5 billion.
That's a huge...
And to put that in perspective, last May, that cap was $60 billion.
So that is a massive deceleration.
Massive deceleration.
To what happens now.
Right. So, I mean, the potential consequences of this slowdown in QT are pretty significant. Particularly for what we call risk assets.
So what are...
Right. So these are,
risk assets.
Things like cryptocurrencies, certain stocks, things that...
Higher risk, high potential returns.
Higher reward.
Higher reward, but also higher volatility.
Right. Okay, so the Fed's slowing down or eventually halting QT.
Means they're reducing the amount of liquidity being pulled out of the market.
Right.
And that can create a really favorable environment for these types of assets.
So more of a bullish environment.
So investors who were maybe hesitant to allocate capital.
Right, because they're worried.
Because they're worried about, about things tightening up.
Things tightening up,
Might feel more confident.
Might feel a little bit more confident.
Though it could lead to a more sustained recovery.
Recovery,
Across the board.
Across the board.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Okay, good. I'm glad. I'm following along.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to another big development in the crypto space.
Yeah.
This is Ripple and the SEC.
Right.
This long-running battle.
Yeah.
And it sounds like there's been a breakthrough.
There has been a breakthrough.
What's going on?
Yeah, so this is a really pivotal moment for Ripple.
Okay.
And potentially for the entire cryptocurrency industry in the U.S.
Okay, so the central question in this case has been whether XRP, Ripple's associated cryptocurrency, should be classified as a security. By the SEC.
And the big news is that the SEC...
The big news is...
has decided to withdraw its appeal.
Withdraw its appeal.
So they're stepping back.
They're stepping back.
So what does this mean?
Right. So, I mean, the ramifications of this
Yeah.
are potentially huge.
Okay.
First of all, it sets a precedent
Okay.
for how regulators in the U.S.
Right.
might approach classifying other cryptocurrencies.
Right.
If XRP is not deemed a security,
Yeah.
it gives other crypto projects a legal reference point.
So they can say, hey,
look,
XRP wasn't considered
a security.
Well, why should ours be?
Why should ours be?
Right. And the SEC had argued that XRP functioned as an unregistered security.
Under the Howey test.
Right, under the Howey test.
Which basically means that investors were putting money into a common enterprise, which is Ripple, with the expectation of profit derived solely from the efforts of others.
Right. So withdrawing the appeal.
Withdrawing this appeal
could lead to a reduction.
A huge reduction.
In regulatory uncertainty.
Yeah.
Which has been like a major roadblock.
A major roadblock.
For the crypto industry in the U.S.
Yeah. I mean, it's been...
So this could be like...
It could be like...
A huge turning point.
A turning point, yeah.
For innovation and development.
Innovation, yeah.
In the U.S.
Without the fear of...
Without the fear of...
Constant,
Of the SEC coming down?
SEC crackdown.
Yeah.
Right? And I think
So could this also push...
It could push
U.S. lawmakers to actually like create
some
clearer crypto legislation.
Yeah. I mean, compared to...
Because we've been lagging.
We've been lagging behind other countries.
And this could be the thing?
This could be the thing.
That gets them moving.
That gets them moving. And then also, with this increased legal certainty...
It might make like big institutions more comfortable adopting blockchain payments.
Blockchain,
Right.
And so that would really accelerate the mainstreaming.
Yeah, the mainstreaming of crypto. Yeah. Yeah, what do you think is like the most impactful part of this?
I mean, to me, it's the potential for this regulatory clarity to finally come.
It feels like that's been a major roadblock.
Yeah. I mean, that's been the thing that's been holding everything back.
Okay, so let's move on to something completely different.
Right.
We're going to the University of Pennsylvania.
UPenn.
Where they've had this suspension of federal funding.
And this is all tied to this ongoing discussion.
Around transgender athletes.
Right.
So the Trump administration has suspended like...
$175 million.
$175 million.
In federal funding.
And this is all tied to a transgender swimmer.
A transgender
competing on the women's team.
Yeah.
And this just shows...
This just highlights the
tension.
Between inclusivity
and fairness in sports.
Yeah, and how do you...
$175 million.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. What kind of impact could that have?
Right. I mean, federal funding is like the lifeblood of universities like UPenn.
Yeah.
It supports research, infrastructure, scholarships,
financial aid, community programs, like everything.
Yeah.
So losing that much money
means some tough decisions.
Yeah, some tough decisions.
Budget cuts. Program reductions.
Yeah, some tough priorities.
And this isn't just like
an isolated incident.
No, this could be a signal. Of bigger changes.
Yeah.
So what could happen?
Right. I mean, if other universities face this same kind of scrutiny and the possibility of losing
money,
losing funding, they might have to
reevaluate their policies. About transgender athletes,
which could lead to policy changes.
Or even
legal challenges.
We might see the courts get involved. To try to set some precedents.
To try to figure it out.
Congress might
step in
and try to create
guidelines.
This
is a big deal.
It's a big deal.
This is a really big deal.
Yeah.
What do you think is like the hardest part?
I think the hardest part is trying to find like an equitable solution.
That balances everything.
Inclusion.
Fair competition. It's tough.
It is really tough.
Okay, so our last topic takes us to baseball. And Shohei Ohtani. His first home run.
Came with some controversy.
Yeah. So there was this apparent fan interference as the ball was coming.
Yeah. Going into the stands. And the replays seemed to show that a fan, like,
Let a fan
touch the ball.
Touch the ball
before it was out of play.
Out of play.
So did the home run stand.
They reviewed it.
They reviewed it.
And they upheld the call on the field.
So the home run counted.
Home run counted.
Dodgers won the game.
Dodgers won the game.
But this whole thing really brings up this question of fan interference.
Fan interference.
Why is this such a problem?
Right. I mean,
in base, it's because the field
is so close
to the fans.
Yeah. So there are a lot of
opportunities for them to mess things up. And then you've got instant replay. Which is supposed to help. Right.
But it's not perfect. No.
It can slow things down.
And
even with the replays,
it can be hard.
It's still kind of subjective.
It's not
always clear.
So you still get
disagreements.
So
what can be done
about
this?
They can
stricter rules, for fan behavior,
or even
change stadium designs.
Change how the stadium
prevent this.
Yeah, to try to prevent this.
And Ohtani is he's a global superstar.
Sure.
So anything he does
gets
magnified.
It's magnified.
Even something small.
Even a small thing becomes a big deal. So we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We've gone from Dogecoin
to the Fed,
to Ripple to transgender athletes to baseball. It's been a journey.
It has been a journey.
But when you think about all these things together, you start to see...
And you see these themes.
These themes emerge. The evolving nature of crypto.
Right.
Big shifts.
In regulation.
In financial regulation.
There's discussions about
inclusion. Fairness.
And
then, even in baseball, the rules are changing.
And these are not
isolated things. It's all connected.
It's
all part of
this bigger
puzzle
that's shaping our world. And I think these developments are going to keep having big effects on how we interact with everything.
Oh, to the technology, with markets, with society.
Yeah.
It's a lot to think about.
It is a lot to think about.
So as we wrap up here, I want to leave you with this.
Okay.
Think about everything we've talked about. Dogecoin, the Fed Ripple, transgender athletes, baseball. What fundamental shifts do you think are happening in how we value assets, how we make the rules, how we enforce the rules, how we even define fairness in this crazy world?
What unexpected
connections
might there be
between all these things?
Between all these seemingly unrelated things. That we haven't even thought of.
Yeah, it really is. Food for thought. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone, for this deep dive.
Yeah. We'll see you next time.
Bye.